I think the ability to move with our emotions is probably the greatest life skill for all of us, or one of the most difficult to master, and also one of the most important to master. And taking the time to learn how to be with your emotions, and for those of you that are practitioners, to find even more skills to help your clients move through emotions is really important. I think, especially at this time, a lot of people are dealing with a lot of emotions with the state of the world. And the more skills we have, the better we can navigate. And, sometimes I think about how our lives would be different, how our conflicts would be different if we had learned how to move with our emotions when we were children. And I've said many times that the answer to all of the world's problems is teaching everyone how to feel a feeling. We would have more adult conversations. We would have a lot less reactivity, and I imagine a lot more productivity. So again, thank you for being here. And I'm going to start talking, and we'll see what I wind up saying. And yes, we're going to be talking about emotions. I am going to be guiding you through some practices. And I don't want anybody getting overly triggered and not having the ability to move through it. So do what you need to do. So if I suggest that you think about something that makes you a little sad, don't pick the biggest, most traumatic event of your life to think about. Think about something little and work with your own ability. And we're not going to go that deep unless you do, and that's up to you. So last week I was watching a rerun of Project Runway, which is my new favorite addictive habit, and actually one of the few television shows I feel like I can tolerate anymore. I think that when we're dealing with a lot of things happening in our lives, a lot of emotions, television can be a little bit too much. But anyway, the point being, on Project Runway, one of the designers said, well, I'm not usually an emotional person. And I cringed. It's like, there is no such thing as a non-emotional person. Every single person is wired with emotions. You don't get to decide, I'm not going to have emotions. You have emotions. What you do with those emotions is very individual, very unique to all of us. And not only that, but what you do with those emotions is going to be unique to you from day to day. There are going to be some days you can let yourself feel all the sadness. You can let yourself move through all of the anger, and you do it with intelligence. You feel what's happening in the body. You check and see what's happening. Why am I so upset about this? And how do I navigate it? And then there are other days, the littlest thing is going to set you off and you're going to scream at the top of your lungs. And why is that? Why does one day we're doing such a good job and another day we're going nuts? There are a lot of reasons. There are a lot of things that contribute to what is called emotional reactivity. And that includes, mental health issues. It includes learned behaviors. It includes physical, conditions. So for me, too much sugar, it's not going to go so well for me the next day. It's not going to go so well for the people around me the next day. So when I have to be calm and present, sugar is not my best friend. But knowing, what those things are for you that tend to make you feel more reactive, which, it's interesting, the term reaction, we talk about chemical reactivity and one substance reacting with another. Emotional reactivity is much the same. Something comes at us, whether it's a person, whether it's an experience, and there's an emotional reaction. That's different from moving with an emotion. We're going to get a lot deeper into that shortly. So those of you that were here for the November talk, we did touch into some emotions, and how to move with them in the body. Today, we're going to go deeper. And again, go as far as feels comfortable for you. So first, we are going to just do, so just so you have a little sense of where we're going tonight, I'm going to talk about how emotions are held in the body. And then we're going to go into the feelings of apathy, feelings of sadness and grief, feelings of anger, and feelings of fear. And I'm going to give you some very specific movement practices for working with those feelings. And hopefully that will be helpful. So, as I said, I think a couple times already, emotions are felt in the body. And I imagine a lot of you are actually here because you already know that and want to know more about what that looks like and how to work with it. Whereas I'm guessing some of you are like, what? What are you talking about? I didn't know that emotions are felt in the body. So we're going to pause and just, again, we're going to think about something, like I said earlier, that makes you just a little sad. And don't go for the big thing, just something. And as you're thinking about that, I just want you to notice if your body feels a little heavier, if your eyes go, downward, if your heart starts to ache, some sort of sensation in the body. And then we're just going to leave that for now. We're not going to go any deeper into it. And then just let yourself feel or think about something that brings you a lot of joy. Think about an animal, a child that you love, or a funny show that you just watched. And you might notice your cheeks start to go up, your eyes get a little bigger, you sit up a little taller. So we all feel emotions in the body while they are happening. And we all feel them differently. I know Louise Hay wrote a lot about if you feel this, then that. And they're often true. I especially like how she talks about bladder infections being connected to being pissed off. Feels like a pretty literal translation. But for me, I tend to feel anger in my throat. And especially if I am not expressing the anger, it feels like somebody's choking me. So starting to pay attention, I'm just going to say something because I see something in the chat. I'm not going to pay attention to the chat box right now because I'm going to lose track. So Tom and Jessica, maybe if you're paying attention and you want to bring those questions to me later, or we'll bring the questions up later. So back to, I feel anger in the throat, but others may feel it someplace else. So getting familiar with your body and where you hold an emotion is really important. And the reason it's important is because feelings are designed to move. They are the literal, or one of the definitions of emotion is energy in motion. And they will move when we let them. I often talk about feelings as waves on the ocean, that if we just let them do their thing, they will sequence through and complete. Now I say that, we just let them do the thing, and they're going to sequence through, they're going to complete. I wrote 2 books about how to do that. It's not that, I'm not going to just tell you that and say, just do it. There's a bit to it. But more often than letting that feeling come and move through awareness and do its thing, we have an opinion or we have a thought, and it'll be something like, well, you're not allowed to feel that way, or you shouldn't think that, or if you let yourself feel that, you're going to get lost in it. And none of that is true. You're allowed to feel what you feel. One of my least favorite things is when somebody tells me you shouldn't feel that way. Now, there are ways that, I might feel that have nothing or everything to do with the person that I'm in front of. But The fact that I feel what I feel is only my business. And what I do with what I feel is also my business. Nobody gets to tell me, unless, of course, I'm acting inappropriately. And actually, and that's not the truth. When you're yelling and screaming at somebody, that's not feeling a feeling. So we get confused, as in the realm of talking about feelings. A lot of people talk about suppression and expression. I think of suppression as actually pushing down the feeling, going below it, not allowing it to sequence through. Whereas expression can often also not be feeling a feeling. It could be yelling at the top of your lungs and never actually becoming aware of what's happening internally. So to feel a feeling means to get in touch with what's happening in the sensation in your body. So when I recognize that something that my husband is doing might be pissing me off, I know most of the time he's a saint, but once in a while, you all know this, right? I start to notice that, maybe my stomach is getting a little tight. Maybe my throat's getting a little tight. Maybe I'm feeling like I want to hit him, I start to notice those things internally first. I hang out with them. I let them move through and sequence so that I know what's actually upsetting me. And what might be upsetting me is it could be based on something that happened 40 years ago with my father. It could be because I had too much sugar. It could be because of a million little things that have nothing to do with what I think it has to do with in front of me in the moment. The Course in Miracles actually says we're never upset for the reason we think, which is a really good reason to not spend a lot of time trying to figure out why you feel the way you do. Instead, allowing yourself to go into sensation. So, what we don't feel, we actually suppress and we hold in the body. And that suppression of feelings creates havoc in so many ways. From as a child, and so many of us suppressed feelings as children because we weren't in a safe environment where we were allowed to express those feelings, where we were allowed to feel what we feel. And so we put them into the body for safekeeping. And the kind, compassionate way to look at that is that was really smart, because sometime in your future, you get to bring those feelings forward with somebody in an environment where it feels safe to process them. What happens is if they don't get processed, is that they can lead to all kinds of stuff physically and emotionally. So on the physical level, suppressed emotions have been shown to lead to almost every illness there is. My husband does crazy energy medicine and almost always finds stress and anger below a cold, MS, big things and little things are often driven by what we weren't able to feel. Again, those emotions are energy and they get held, creating havoc in the body. They also create havoc in our emotional patterns. So when I was a child, if I wasn't listened to, I might feel like nobody ever listens to me. I might attract people that don't listen to me so that I can work through that issue. If I didn't get enough attention, I might spend my life seeking attention. All of these things that we think, well, I'm 60 years old, I'm 80 years old, I'm however old I am. That was a long time ago. It doesn't work that way. Time does not heal emotional wounds. Okay. So for the good news, what does heal emotional wounds? Moving with them, moving through them. So just making sure, checking my notes, making sure I'm not missing stuff. I think one little gentle practice I want to start us with is actually one, before I go into any of the feelings I talked about, how how much of what we see in the world and how much of our emotions are driven by our perspective. So, one easy way to use the body to help you recognize that you can shift perspective at any time is to simply allow yourself to change what you're looking at in this moment. I know most of you are looking at the screen, and well, hopefully you like what you see on the screen. That would be good. But for a moment, let yourself shift your awareness, your attention to something beyond the screen. So, what's on the wall beyond the screen? What's out the window? And taking a moment with that to just notice that simply looking someplace different allows you to shift your perspective. So, when dealing with emotions, if you're engaged in an argument with somebody and you're really focused on them, simply going, well, what's happening over here for a minute might give you a little bit of a different way of seeing what's happening. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk first about apathy, which is that heavy energy. It's actually the chart of emotions that I work with. Apathy is at the bottom. It's the lowest energy. It's also synonyms include depression and hopelessness and I don't want to. And whether you consider yourself an apathetic person or somebody who deals with apathy on a regular basis, it doesn't really matter. We all sometimes experience apathy. And I think this is actually one of the feelings that we don't let ourselves really feel. Some do, some don't. Some people get stuck in apathy, and some people go, oh no, that's not allowed. But all feelings, including apathy, are designed to move. So one of the practices, and the practices are really, these are practices from my book that are coming out. And the practices really are designed to be done physically. Now, since you're here and you're watching me, you're probably not going to get on the floor or you're probably not going to start doing this. So instead, I want you to imagine doing this. But if you feel like you want to get up and do this, totally go for it. So this first practice I call be a sloth. So I want you to think about the feeling first of apathy and notice when you let yourself feel, hopeless and I don't want to and resistant to everything, it's kind of hard to move. And I know when I'm feeling apathetic, if I'm on the couch and watching television and something has to happen, there's a whole lot of I don't want to. And putting that into movement, letting yourself become a sloth. So I think you probably all know that sloths are known for how slow they move. So the practice of letting yourself become a sloth looks like this. How am I going to get there from here? So I see some of you laughing, which is awesome. This is meant to shake stuff up. So just allow yourself to even imagine moving as a sloth when you're in apathy. It should feel good because it's going to match the energy that you're experiencing. So the other thing when I'm in apathy and I feel like I can't move a muscle, I know that's not true. I know that my muscles will move. But instead of telling myself, get up do the dishes, go to your computer, do this. What I do is I say to myself, what can you do? And I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm laying flat on my back, what I can do is I can sit up. And that's it. But that practice of asking, what can I do, instead of telling yourself what you should do, is going to make a world of difference. Okay.
Damn, Jane.
Mm-hmm. I heard somebody say something.
Keep going. We're fine.
Okay. All right. So we're going to keep moving because I could spend all of our time on apathy, but then we wouldn't get to sadness and anger and fear. So sadness includes a whole range of experiences. Depression, well, depression is not sadness. Depression is actually closer to apathy. People confuse it with sadness, which is why I wanted to mention it. I actually think of depression as a blanket over all emotions. But I do want to distinguish sadness and grief. So grief includes sadness, but grief also includes anger and confusion and all kinds of emotions that come in waves. So we'll specifically talk about the feeling of sadness, which you probably have experienced at some point in your life. So when we think about sadness, again, we tend to think of those heavier feelings, and some of the thoughts that accompany sadness that I've heard from my clients are, I'm afraid to feel it because if I start crying, I'll never stop. So you can cry and cry for weeks and not ever feel a feeling. Because tears are not necessarily connected to feeling. So when you actually tap into what's happening in sensation, when you really allow yourself to feel the sadness that you feel, whether it's about a personal loss, whether it's about the state of the world, that recognition of what you're feeling in your body is going to go a lot further, and it's going to be where you will process the feeling of sadness from. And when you truly let yourself feel what's happening in the body, tears may come, but they're not likely to last long. Excessive crying tends to have other thoughts and maybe some self-pity and some fear and other things coupled into it that complicate it and stop it from moving. But when you actually get in touch with the genuine feeling of sadness and what you're sad about, and let yourself breathe with it, it will dissolve a lot faster than you think. So, a couple of practices for sadness. So the first is really what I'm just talking about right now, is just starting to identify what sadness feels like in your body. And as best you can, dropping any judgment, any opinions, any wanting to figure it out, and just allowing yourself to feel and be with the sensation of sadness in your body. So just a few breaths. So let's do that one. We started before, but let's do it again. We'll do a little bit more with it. So thinking of something, and it could be the environment, it could be a personal loss. Again, it could be the state of the world. It could be anything. Something that makes you a little sad. And just let yourself breathe with whatever it is that you're aware of. So maybe you want to soften the belly. Maybe you want to relax the shoulders. Maybe you want to give yourself some reassurance. They're there. It's okay to be sad. And even as we do this, some of you might be noticing, you might have memories. Oh, I wasn't allowed to be sad. I always had to be the happy one. So just for now, could you give yourself permission, space, to feel whatever it is that you feel when we talk about sadness? Okay. And then just take a breath and let that go for now as best you can. And then the second practice, and again, we're going to do this in our imagination, but if you're in a place that you can actually do this, do it. The sensations and the movement that we typically associate with sadness are heavy and downward and forward moving. So everybody kind of get in touch with that in the body, of that heavy forward moving, the that goes with sadness. And then either go ahead and do this, or in your mind's eye, imagine going backwards with sadness. So still letting yourself feel sad, but moving backwards. And then imagine still being sad, but not drooped over, that you're standing tall, but you're still sad. And letting yourself move to the right and move to the left and swing forward and swing back and and be sad in all these different directions. Giving sadness some options on how it wants to move. Cool. So I know we said we were going to save questions to the end, but I want to check right now if anybody has anything they want to say or ask about apathy or sadness. Going once, going twice, moving on to anger. Where we're going, should we go to anger? Should we go to fear? I think we're going to fear next. We're going to fear next. So again, no ma'am, I just really need to buy your books. All right. Fear, worry, and anxiety. So these, in the book, I have these in one chapter, but there is there's a distinguished, yeah, I'm not going to say that word. I want to distinguish between them. So fear is an experience that we're having in the moment. And it arises because something right in front of us, lions and tigers and bears, are scaring us. My experience, mountain lions, we just saw one the other day, not a mountain lion. We just saw a coyote. Coyotes, snakes, those things bring up fear in the moment. Anxiety is something that we tend to create in our mind, and it's future-based. And it's funny because I've been thinking to myself, if anxiety had a mantra, it would be, why postpone fear? So we take something that's happening in the future, or something that's not happening, or something in our mind, and get ourselves pretty agitated. And I'm not going to say that it doesn't have a physical component, because it often does, but I'm speaking about emotions in an hour as best I can. Worry can be considered a feeling of fearfulness, but I tend to think of worry more as a habit. And I have a whole separate section that we're not going into tonight. So the first practice with fear that I want us to think about, a lot of people, especially, and so this is more of an anxiety practice, a lot of people with anxiety don't really know how to settle themselves. So for those of you that are practitioners, you've probably seen this in your clients. For those of you that experience anxiety, you probably know this. I can't calm down. I can't calm down. And when somebody tells us to settle, it's not necessarily helpful. But learning how to settle the body, how to self-soothe, goes a long way in terms of handling anxiety. So I'm going to walk us through this one. So I want you to actually allow yourself to imagine that you're walking in some mud. Not too deep, because I don't want you to get stuck in the mud. I want you to just feel the feeling of nice, wet dirt on your feet. And allow yourself to imagine really stepping into that dirt, feeling the sensation, letting that be the most important thing you're doing in the moment. Just really enjoying the feeling of mud and being that connected to the earth. And then when you're ready, and again, you might want to come back to this and spend more time in the dirt later. But for now, I want you to imagine that you're in the ocean and you're letting yourself settle into the water, into the ocean. So because we're doing this in our imagination, you all have the ability to float. So just floating on the water and letting the water hold you up, feeling the support of the ocean. And maybe you find yourself swaying, just enjoying settling yourself into the ocean. And let's just do one more. Let's do this with the wind. So the wind's a great one to practice this with, because so many of us have an aversion to the wind. But what if you didn't? What if you could just let the wind blow you? Oh, there's nothing I need to do because the wind is blowing me back and forth. I'm completely at one with the wind. And then again, just letting that go. And you can also do this with fire, or a rocking chair, or a blanket, or anything that appeals to you. The more practices you have, the more ways you have to settle in your body, the better. It's interesting because that makes that one of the premises of dance movement therapy is that the more movement options we have in the body, the more options we have in navigating life. So if your movement repertoire is always moving fast, or your movement repertoire is always moving strong, you might want to learn how to go a little slower, how to go a little softer, how to be a little more fluid. Because again, we want options when it comes to moving the body. You know, some of you have probably heard where the mind goes, the body will follow. I say the opposite. Where the body goes, the mind will follow. When you learn to settle the body, the mind will settle. Okay. Um, Fear, worry. Okay, I'll say a little bit more. I don't think we'll do this one as, I think I'll just give you two more practices that you might play with um, tomorrow. With anxiety and fear, we use the expression "I'm wound up." At least I do, and it's often something people can relate to. God, I feel so wound up. So letting yourself unwind. So find the direction that you feel wound in and go the other way. So in your own time, play with that one. And one more. Where to go? Oh, I have to talk about shaking and trembling, and we're going to talk about it when it gets to anger. So I'll say a little bit here and then I'll say a little bit more. With anxiety, with fear, we are literally trembling internally. And so taking that internal tremble and making it external is going to move it. Keeping it inside is just going to make it stronger and more intense. So take that internal tremble and make it bigger. Okay, I'll give you another opportunity. Any questions about fear and anxiety?
We don't have any about fear and anxiety. I don't know if you want to back. There was one question on apathy. Is there a time limit to give yourself on apathy? And I think the exercises for apathy.
Say the last part of the question.
Is there a time
Time
limit
limit.
for the practices dealing with
Oh, okay.
apathy?
Okay. I feelings don't need a time limit when you feel them. They need a time limit when you don't feel them. So when you find yourself, complaining about the world and I feel so apathetic and I don't want to do anything, it's probably because you really haven't leaned into what's there. When you lean into what's there and you do the practice, it will start to shift, or it should start to shift. If it doesn't, get help, because it means there's probably something under it. Okay. Anger. Anybody need me to explain what anger is? So what I will say is anger arises on a continuum. So we get irritated, we get annoyed, we get angry, we get rageful. So, and all feelings happen on a continuum from a little bit to a lot. And it's funny sometimes, say to somebody, "Are you angry?" "No, I'm just annoyed." It's like, well, annoyance is anger, and we try and minimize our anger. So many of us have gotten messages that it's not okay to be angry, especially women. Men have gotten more messages that it's not okay to be sad. It's all okay. We all have a full range of emotions. It's not okay to dump those emotions on everybody around you, but it is okay to feel them and move with them. Frustration, yes, is also often anger. In fact, frustration, when you just, this wasn't even on the thing, but right now it's like, oh, I'm so frustrated. If you let yourself feel frustration, it's going to feel very much like anger is going to feel. So with frustration, it would be fun to let it get bigger or smaller. So, playing with, I'm really frustrated. Oh, I'm really frustrated. And just see what happens. All right, so on to the practices that we were going to do. And the other thing, and I did mention this earlier, people have gotten afraid of anger because of being around people who rage. People who rage are not feeling their feelings. They're looking to get past the feeling. They don't want to feel the feeling. So you probably have some people around you that rage or that are highly reactive, or maybe you've been watching the news and going, I don't think these people are really emotionally intelligent. Why are they always yelling? Why do they have so many emotions? It's like, that's not emotions. That's reaction. And that's screaming, and that's trying to get away from a feeling. So, learning again to feel your feelings, what they look like. As a child, I was actually told, I was a redhead as a child. I was laughed at for my redhead temper. And for a lot of years, I didn't let myself get angry because I thought people would laugh at me. I was fortunate enough to go to a school that was all about claiming your emotions. So, and I was really fortunate that I had a husband that was able to somehow navigate that and get that through with me, because one of the things that happens when you've learned to suppress a particular emotion, it sometimes comes back pretty strong. So a little bit of a seesaw effect until we find balance. So just a heads up for those of you that are reclaiming anger. So shaking. Shaking is such a brilliant practice. Animals do it in nature when they're scared, and we actually shake with rage as well as tremble with fear. So letting yourself shake in whatever, you could shake in your chair, you can shake your hand, you can shake your head. All of those things is going to create movement. So it's one of the simplest practices, and one that I do a lot. It's been interesting. I'm writing this book with 81 somatic practices, spending a lot of time at my desk. And it's like, I think you better start practicing what you preach. So I did a lot, and my body's really good at that. 90 minutes is my max at the computer before my body starts going, you got to move. So I would get up and sometimes just shake. So the other cool thing about shaking, and not on topic, but in the other section on thoughts, it's really hard to stay stuck on a thought when you're shaking your body. So shaking. Okay. This is one of my new favorite practices, and I know Anne's here. Some of you can see her, some of you can't. But we walk the dogs in the morning together. And one of the things that I learned from the dogs is to growl and grumble with my feelings. So this is good for a lot of things. So like if you find yourself complaining about anything, instead of using words, because when you use words to complain, they get you more agitated. When you use sounds to complain, it moves. So I don't know if you guys can unmute or if Jessica has to unmute everybody, but I would love for us all just to do a little growling and grumbling like the dogs do in the morning when they're agitated. Mm-hmm. So is that possible, Jessica? Can we all growl together for a minute? No, not possible. So I guess we can't all growl and grumble together, but could you let yourself think about something that you're typically complaining about? And instead of complaining about it, just go, might feel better, yes? Good. I'll do one other and then we'll open it up to questions. So the one other one, and I have to credit my dance teacher in Colorado, Jessica. And I think it was definitely before, I think it was right before COVID. She was talking about how we go walking down the street and, everybody always does that little automatic smile, and and sometimes you don't feel like smiling at people. So she said, what if we walked down the street and went, instead of smiling at everybody? And I never had the nerve to actually do that to anybody, But what I would sometimes do is after I had passed them, I would go so that they didn't see it. And then when we all had masks for COVID, it was really easy to do that. So when you feel angry and agitated with somebody, or you're just in a crappy mood, that, going back to childhood and going, I don't want to, I don't like you, will help to move the feeling. Okay. So I think we've got about 10 minutes. And I did see a couple things coming through in the chat, but I didn't really see them. So,
Melanie, the first thing I'm going to do is post in the chat for everybody the name of your prior book, Free in 30
mhm.
Seconds, the name
Okay,
of the book that you're describing now, Shake Yourself Free. And so everybody can have that information.
great.
Uh,
Thank you.
I'd like to also announce one other thing before we go into questions. We will be posting the talk on YouTube. So if you want to actually sit and listen to it again, just Google NAMI Santa Fe YouTube and the talk will come up, or all our series of talks will come up, and you can easily find Melanie's because it should be on YouTube within what, a couple of days, Jess?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of days.
And
Okay.
I did just see my previous talk is still up there on stress. So, um, yeah, and thank you for doing that. My book, Stress Free in 30 Seconds. Best way to get it is just to go to my website. Amazon doesn't keep them in stock. I have to send it to them. They have to send it back, but it's also available on Kindle. Um,
Okay. Do you want to read the questions? Do you want me to read them to you? How do you want to do it?
it'd be great if you read them to me.
Okay. Hello, group. Coming here from an EMDR therapy session. Excited to learn new ways of getting motion and sharing. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Uh,
Let me make a comment. So I am an EMDR practitioner, and adding the body to EMDR just deepens the practice. And one really fun way to work with EMDR and the body is when you're working with somebody around any kind of issue to feel the body posture associated with the upset or what the typical behavior is. So every time the boss comes in, I shrink. So you let them feel the shrinking, add the tappers, and then when they're ready, shift to what would you like to feel like when the boss comes in and says something, and add the tappers. So just one quick little, but yeah, great. EMDR is wonderful.
Fantastic. Okay, coming here as both a professional and a person coping with trauma, urgency is my reactive coping mechanism that I hope to work through. This is related to fear and nervousness. EMDR helped the intrusive thoughts, night terrors, and nightmares, but feelings remain in my body and need release.
Okay, so my question would be is was the EMDR practitioner referencing the body? Because that's the piece. It's like it's funny that that question is coming after the other question, after the other comment. But if the EMDR is not taking you into sensation, it won't be as effective. And I don't know who's asking the question, but if you want to reach out to me, I do a free 30-minute consult and be happy to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Melanie. Okay, I want to move on. Which book would give us more information on the topic you're talking about?
The second book,
Okay, and that second book is Shake Yourself
Shake
Free.
Yourself Free.
Okay, and that'll be published in a few
Sometime in the
months.
next 6 months, though I do want to say, especially for the practitioners on this call with us, I am going to be doing a series of free webinars because I really want this book in the hands of practitioners because I know that it will reach more people that way. Not to say that it's not for everybody. Everybody will be welcome, but practitioners, if you're watch for that. And I did get emails, so I will be sharing this information with you.
Okay, Jess posted the link to your book on Amazon. As you said, it's on Amazon Kindle. In terms of the YouTube search, NAMI Santa Fe YouTube, or search in the YouTube search bar. Our YouTube channel will come right up. It does every time. And you can find this talk, Melanie's talk from November, and a lot of other good talks from many, many different perspectives on mental health. And there were, let's see if there's anything else. What is the best way to start feeling through emotions?
Setting an intention to become aware, to notice them. So if this is new for you, I spent the first year of my training at Naropa learning how to recognize a feeling in the body. So if you set the intention to become aware of what's happening, you will start to notice things. So, and one of the things I would encourage is to get as precise as you can with your verbiage rather than a label. So sometimes I ask people, what are you feeling or what's happening? And they'll say, I feel anxious. And I say, okay, take the label off. And then, okay, there's a shakiness and my breath is kind of stilted and my stomach is kind of tight. So the more you can name the sensation, just taking that pause to notice. I mean, most of the time we don't know what we're feeling in the body because we're not taking the time to notice what we're feeling in the body.
Thank you. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I spend most of my time living in my head,
Uh-huh.
and I very, very seldom am really in contact with whatever my emotions are. But every now and then, all of a sudden, I find myself behaving in a way that surprises me. It's almost like I get ambushed by my emotions. For somebody who's really disconnected with their body and their
Yeah.
emotions,
Yeah.
is there any one practice or any approach that you would recommend?
Yeah, I would recommend that you set a timer or an alarm to go off once an hour and just go, how am I doing? And one thing that will get you in touch with your emotions, I think maybe faster than anything, is to breathe and soften and open. So what happens when I just, oh, what's happening in this body right now?
Thank you.
You're
I,
welcome.
that sounds like a good thing to try.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there, let's see, this webinar, but emotion. This is very on point with this webinar, but the emotion wheel has now been upgraded to include sensation. The emotion and sensation wheel.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to comment on that?
I didn't know that, but it's awesome, and I'm going to look it up.
Well, thank
Because,
you.
it's funny because there's a comment from Candace Pert who wrote Molecules of Emotion. See if I can get my hands on it real fast. I know we're out of time here. But emotions are simply a sensation with a label. I'm not going to find it, but that's what they are. We've labeled a sensation. And when we start taking the label off, we get a host of different information.
Fantastic. Melanie, thank you. Another great talk. Really appreciated it. I was spellbound the whole time just listening. So thank you very, very much. And again, we hope to have you back next year, whether you write another book or even just talk about this one.